Welcome back to the Quick Tap. I'm Charlie Morgan, the Telegraph's senior rugby writer, and for our final episode this autumn, I'm joined by England Saracens fullback Alex Goode. Goody, how are you?
I'm very well. You're sounding a bit husky yourself. Big night.
Christmas party Thursday, battled on through. Where are we? Saturday now, just still chucking, mate.
In November, eh?
Of course, cheaper. Today we have former Ireland hooker, acting head of performance at Horse Sport Ireland, pundit extraordinaire with the RTE, the 42.ie, and columnist at Sunday Independent, Bernard Jackman. Bernard, huge pleasure to have you, mate.
Yeah, thanks lads. Delighted to be here. Just back from the Viva, where Ireland got the win, 3 from 4, but plenty to chat about.
Well, we'll be diving into that game soon and that nail biter. But tonight we're changing up our format. So we're going to talk about Lions, debate our starting 15s, and have lots of arguments, no doubt. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for the good, the bad, and the rugby channel.
Before we get going, big thanks to our sponsor, Continental Tyres. They're our go-to for premium tyres, prioritising safety, performance, and grip. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. So Ireland sign off their autumn in their year with a 22-19 win over Australia. Possibly a microcosm of their autumn.
Yeah, we've huffed and we've puffed, but we haven't blown the house down. I mean, Ireland's attack since the World Cup has become more predictable. I just today's game, the last 20 minutes kind of reminds me a little bit about of the quarter-final defeat to New Zealand in the World Cup, where Ireland had to keep the ball in hand. They were 4 points behind, and they went after New Zealand, but New Zealand just didn't give them the errors that Ireland live off. So they didn't give away penalties. No one jumped out of the line. They used the touchline as an extra defender, and just stayed connected. And I think, after the game, Ian Foster said, it was Ireland's paint by numbers attack. And it seems as if the good teams, the tier 1 sides, have become more comfortable defending against Ireland now. Last week you saw Fiji jump out of the line trying to make big hits, and Ireland ripped them apart. But Argentina, New Zealand and Australia this November have defended together rather than individually. It sounds so obvious, but it's just when the teams play against Ireland, they seem now, the good teams, to be very aware. As long as you don't panic, eventually Ireland will have an error and you'll get it off the hook. And Ireland's shape today at times looked really good, but those errors came, or those breakdown turnovers came because we weren't resourcing the ruck properly or as well as we could. And I wonder, it's all not down to Johnny Sexton. I think the game has shifted a little bit. Having long periods of possession is more of a risk than the reward is worth, mainly because the defensive ruck is such a mess at the moment, and like Ireland are doing it themselves. So I think we're wasting a lot of energy, using a lot of energy trying to be super aggressive at the defensive ruck through counter rucking and barging. But likewise, opposition are doing that to us, and Gibson-Park isn't able to have the constant quick ball that we lived off, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think refs are very happy to allow opposition put 3 bodies into defensive ruck, because theoretically that makes more space, but it's actually stopping us getting any flow into our attack. And maybe we're going to have to address how we play, because it's not really working at the moment, and it has been on a gradual decline probably all during the Six Nations. We probably limped to a Six Nations. South Africa away, we got a win in South Africa in the second test, but it wasn't really fluid. And then obviously this November has been, results wise been good, but performance wise been a little bit underwhelming.
I think on the points made there, I totally agree in terms of defensive ruck. I thought Australia, and when New Zealand played Ireland, they were very clever as to which rucks they picked to attack. And Ireland are so good at keeping their own ball, and they can go through multi-phases. But teams are really selective as to when there's an opportunity, they go really hard at it. And they might put 1 or 2 in, but there might be 8, 9 rucks where they just sit off. It's not that Ireland are punching through the middle of teams. They're trying to sort of go round them and try and use this wonderful shape, which has been so effective. But they're not pincering through the middle of teams and making them have to scramble. It's always on the outside where they can sort of move, shift together, and then get them to a touchline, and then they can fly off the line. But I think the big thing there, the defensive breakdown, it's so hard now, and I was discussing this yesterday with someone, to clear out the breakdown. I do not know, as attacking players, where, if someone gets in a jackal position, where you can clear them out. Because if you hit them anywhere near the head, it's a yellow, a red card. if you go, and they're right on the floor over the ball, if you go off your feet diving down and show the sort of airplane landing sort of body angle, you get penalised being off your feet. If you come in at the sides now, you're in trouble for hitting people at the knees, the side of there, or you now then into the crook roll, which is illegal. So it becomes so hard to clear out unless you win the race and you're already there. Now, that's great, and it's a great idea in theory. Say always win the race. As soon as someone hits the floor, you should have someone over the ball. But if you try and play expansive rugby and you move the ball, or someone uses quick footwork, they might land at a defender's feet, and you have to, win that race over 3 yards. You're not going to get there first, and there is going to be a clear out. And I think it's one of these periods of rugby where I've seen it over time. You go from it's better to have the ball than not have the ball. Then it's actually harder to hold the ball because defensive players don't have to release. I think of the 2009 Lions period where Brousseau came onto the scene and you could just latch on. It was really hard to clear out, and you didn't want to have the ball for more than 3 phases. It goes in certain ebbs and flows, and I think this is a period where having the ball for long phases, the longer you have it, it seems that the harder it is to score. You're more likely to give a penalty away.
All that's done, Alex, is make me feel very smug about the open side that I've picked for my Lions 15 later, so thanks.
I'm glad you think something's gone well for you, because you were panicking off there about how you picked 14 Scotsmen just because you want to be safe north of the border, so well done to you.
Hey, that was all off the record. Let's talk about Sam Prendergast a bit, because we're talking about Ireland trying to kind of get a bit of fluency in their attack, potentially had a bit of a clunky autumn by that score. How did he go, Bernard?
Yeah, he had a good game. I mean, he's somebody. I think the issue for Ireland is because of how we want to play, and because we are maybe slaves to our shape. The 10 we pick is really important. So Jack Crowley obviously replaces Johnny Sexton, wins the Six Nations in his first tournament, had won a URC with Munster. He's a very talented player, 24 years of age, but he's probably our equivalent to Marcus Smith in that he's very good individually, and certainly the question marks are around his ability to boss everybody, get everyone else into shape, to understand if you lose shape, how to get it back, which is quite complicated. And Sexton, made his debut for Ireland at 24, but it was probably between 28 and 38 where he really learnt, how to manage situations on the fly. So it's a lot to ask a 24-year-old Jack Crowley to do that. So I think that's why momentum has swung with Sam Prendergast. And even though he's only 21, I saw him play schools rugby, he has the head for it. I mean, and Farrell, the reaction in Ireland this week was that Farrell has plucked him from nowhere. He's been involved in 20 games for Leinster. He's been on 2 emerging Ireland tours to South Africa with Farrell. He went to the senior tour last year to South Africa, where he didn't play, but Farrell spent a lot of time with him. I think Farrell sees him as somebody who can implement that game plan. Probably maybe better than Sam, or better than Jack. Now, obviously, he hasn't got the experience. Maybe he hasn't got the physicality defensively. But you could see in that first 50 today, I thought he did very well. He actually was... Ireland looked like Ireland. The problem was we were making handling errors a little bit later in the phases, or not being able to keep the ball. And again, is that just the way the game has gone because the energy isn't there, or is that outside his control? But I think the question now for Ireland in terms of 10s is, and it's back to Leinster, who does Leo Cullen pick next week for Europe? Because Ross Byrne played on last night against Ulster. He has Kieran Frawley, who was the heir apparent, and now you've got Sam Prendergast. And so they're probably going to share the game time over the next 6-7 weeks before the Six Nations, and then Jack Crowley's going to go back to Munster and be number 1 and get a chance to play. So we've got 3 very good young 10s, Crowley, Frawley and Prendergast, but I don't think today made it clear who's going to be number 10 against England in February, and that's not ideal for us because, as I said, we're a team where the 10 is absolutely key to bringing everything together. I know it is in every team, but more so for Ireland. More so Ireland because we're slaves to playing through 10.
The big thing they've probably suffered this autumn, more than I've seen for a long time for Ireland, has been the set piece and the set piece delivery. So obviously New Zealand really went after you in the scrum. There's a few problems against Argentina as well. even today, there was a lot of free kicks, resets, like penalties either way. But the line out really hasn't been so much ball winning at the front, like not winning at the back. We're not seeing the clever plays we've seen off dummy mauls and then playing off the back of it. So that's been really difficult. Back to the 10 debate. For me, I wasn't disappointed with Prendergast. I thought he played well. He did well. But he looked very much like Johnny Sexton, and you're right, bang on in the shape of Leinster and playing like that, which is great when you're set piece delivery and you've got parity there and you're on the front foot and everything's just moving. It's a wonderful thing to see. It's just constantly going forward again and again and again. The problem is when we haven't seen Ireland get that go forward, and I felt that Jack Crowley came on, and the first touch I think he went down the short side and took the first defender on. And it was the threat for the first time from first receiver, and he got on the front foot. And suddenly the Australian defence was like, okay, we can't just shift off straight away when 10's passing or move across and not worry about it. We have to worry about the threat in front of us. And I just wonder, with the way we talked about the breakdown, how things are going. Do they need a bit more of a threat at first receiver first to open that up? Because I was very impressed with Jack Crowley. I thought his understanding of game management, when to kick the ball, not just to run the whole time, his understanding of international rugby was pretty good. And I think international rugby, particularly now, if you aren't going anywhere, the ball's slow, the option to put the ball up for your wingers or put it down the middle for Hugo Keenan to chase is a great option. And I think Prendergast was a bit slower to do that today, and they were getting knocked back a bit.
I think it's a really good point. I think the challenge for Ireland is, a little bit earlier we were talking about, Alex, you mentioned Ireland getting the ball to wit, kind of slaves to getting the ball to wit. The challenge as well is, if you look at both our wingers, neither of them are absolute speed merchants. You know, James Lowe is really important for Ireland with his left foot, with his power game. Mac Hansen has a license to roam and he pops up as first receiver a lot, but neither of them have out and out pace, and aren't really footwork, beating people one on one as well. So it's very, I don't think they frighten teams, and then as you mentioned, we don't have that power at the moment to go through them. So it's kind of been played away from the gain line, and not really hurting teams. And Crowley certainly gives you that ability to go to the line as a threat himself, which can obviously hold and draw in defenders. But I actually think the future for Ireland is a combination of 110 starting, 110 finishing. And I know this is controversial in England, but I don't know if we're going to have a 10 who plays 80 minutes every week, and we may have an impact player, or we may have a Frawley type who comes on as a second playmaker, which will make us a little bit more dangerous. Obviously with Bundy and Robbie today, very confrontational, which is important, but we didn't have that second playmaker either, where we were able to engage the line a little bit further out and then put someone through a hole. So plenty to ponder for our new attack coach Andrew Goodman, who was in Leinster and replaced Mike Catt. And obviously with England first up, we need to be pretty sharp.
Goody, I think a generally encouraging facet of this autumn has been Australia's form. They've stuck in against all of the home nations. Obviously beat England, beat Wales handsomely. Were overwhelmed eventually by Scotland, but have stuck in this one today. That's encouraging for the Lions tour for sure.
Yeah, hugely. I think for a few years really we've been quite worried about Australia and this Lions tour. I don't think people have been particularly excited because it seemed as if whatever team we put out, it was going to be too easy. And I think Joe Schmidt is a wonderful, wonderful coach. He's got a proven record, and what he's done, making 19 debutants this year alone, is remarkable, and it's a really good sign for the Lions. It's going to be unbelievably competitive. I thought obviously they showcased how well they can attack against England, but even Scotland, the score didn't do it justice to how they played and the chance they created. And then again today in Ireland, a team who, while we're used to their standard being up here, maybe they're a bit lower than they have been. They're still a top team and one that's flipping hard to beat at home. So for them to push them all the way with a lot of potential there for them to get better, I think is a really good sign for this Lions going forward.
I think that's our cue to get stuck into selection.
I'm excited for this.
I know we're going to be doing this again and again and again over the next few months, but why not start now? Because it's the end of the autumn. We're finishing up 2024 and heading into a Lions year. And as soon as you start to think about it anyway, the combinations are fascinating. We've got an England international and Ireland international. My mum was born in Dundee and my dad's learning Welsh, taking lessons online. Both of those things are actually true. So as far as biases, we are totally covered. I think first things first, Oval Insights have sent us in a side that I'm going to read out now. And we've all individually picked our teams that we're going to sort of go through 1 to 15. So Oval's side from the eligible players playing in the Autumn Nation series, we've got Andrew Porter, Loosehead, Jamie George, Will Stewart, Mario Toji, James Ryan, James Botham at blindside, very interesting. Josh van der Fleer of Ireland at open side, Ben Earl at 8, Jamison Gibson-Park and Finn Russell halfbacks. Centres, Sony Tuipulotu and Gary Ringrose. Wings, Ollie Slightholme and Matt Canson. And fullback, Hugo Keenan. Now, there are some interesting calls there. There are interesting calls throughout our side. So, let's start at Looseheads, where... Shall I go first? I've gone Pierre Schoeman as my first of a few Scots.
Before we start, sorry, Charlie, can you just tell us how many Scotsmen are in
On
your
my
15?
start, I've got a starting 15 of 1, 2, 3, 4... 7. That's quite a few.
7, okay.
You just said they're the only ones who pumped Australia, mate. So there you go.
Okay.
Very happy with that. We'll start at Loosehead. We'll go 1 to 15. I've gone Pierre Schoeman, bearing in mind that all of this could look very silly during the Six Nations, which is what Andy Farrell's going to be looking at very closely. But Pierre Schoeman, for me, I think he's a solid way to kick this off.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can all look silly in a few months, so I don't worry about that. I've gone for Porter. I just think his game around the park is really good. I think he can play long minutes. I wouldn't know if there was a big difference between him and Shuey as in scrummaging, but I think he's a very astute defender, very mobile, and can play good shape in attack.
Yeah, I've gone for Schoeman as well, with Porter and Ellis Genge as my backups. I think the only worry I would have about Porter is, I totally agree with you, Alex, that he plays a lot of minutes. He's very mobile. He covers the ground well, but his carries haven't been as impactful in the last year, and there's just a little bit of a worry around his scrummaging in terms of giving away penalties, and I think Farrell will be very conscious of that. Discipline against Joe Schmidt sides is massive. I think Schoeman can give us stability at scrum time with also big carries with someone like Porter or Genge coming on. So he's my first Scotsman. I'm a lot of recency bias in mine as well. I've gone quite heavy on Scots because they impressed me over the autumn, and I think Glasgow winning and Blair Kinghorn winning in Toulouse just gives them a little bit more confidence, because they were a bit flaky up to now. But yeah, some of the players are bang on form.
Bernard, you kick us off with the hookers, please.
Yeah, so I've gone Dan Sheehan. Obviously, it's nothing to do with November because he's been injured, but I really believe he has the all-round game. That's actually key to how Andy Farrell wants to play. His lineouts are excellent. It's probably some of the reason Ireland's set pieces has dropped off a little bit. Very, very mobile, very explosive, and he just gets the nod ahead of Jamie George and Dewi Lake for me.
Yeah, same for me. I think he's a serious player. Every time he plays for Leinster, he looks exceptional. Every time he plays for Ireland, I think he comes across a very, very clever rugby player. Gets himself in really good positions. Has a very good relationship with Gibson-Park, particularly on those short sides. And I think we'll all be picking him at 9. So I think definitely for me, I know he hasn't played this autumn, but he's someone who is really important for the Lions.
I've gone Ryan Kelleher, but I'm happy to see ground there. That was purely on the basis I didn't consider Sheehan because he hadn't played. Tight head, I've gone with Xander Fagerson.
I've also gone with Fagerson. Again, I think he's someone who doesn't give a lot of penalties away. He goes under the radar a bit, just does his business. Obviously, Furlong would be the star name, but it's a lot of injuries. Is he going to get back to his best? Can he peak for the Lions? Don't know. He's a world-class player and the best tight head in the Six Nations for me when fully fit. But are we going to see enough of that?
Yeah, I've gone for Furlong, and I'm not trying to bias a lot of non-Irish, but I just think that he will get back. He would love to, I suppose, dovetail his career with a big lines. I think Farrell will have faith in him. He knows what he can bring. He just has a little bit more around the field than Ferguson, who's been amazing for Scotland. But the upside with Tig is strong. I also think they're going to mind him. I think that there's going to be pressure to play a couple of those younger props in some of those URC games. So he'll really play the big European games. He'll play the Six Nations, and we'll get to Australia in peak condition, hopefully.
So we've got a front row of Schoeman, Sheehan, and Fagerson. If we're sticking on Fagerson tight head, are we happy with that?
Yeah, because it's 2 out of 3. Yeah,
Yep.
There you go, magic. Locks are going to be quite a little bit trickier. Goody, start us off.
I've gone with Maritoji and Ollie Chesham. I just thought with my back row is going to be quite mobile. I don't have an out-and-out lineup option, so I wanted to have 2 very good lineup operators in the second row. I thought Maritoji's played really well this autumn. He's been a standout player for England and can bring some physicality. I've been slightly disappointed with McCarthy. He hasn't quite been as good as I hoped he was going to this autumn. And I think James Ryan is a good, solid player, playing well. But for me, it was just 2 athletic players who can get up and are 2 very good players.
Bernard, moving on to you.
Yeah, I went Marrow, and it was a shoe in for me, and I went with Joe McCarthy. Mainly, I agree with you, Alex. I don't think he's been at his best, but he has a huge amount of potential. He's a big, strong, young ball carrier. He's actually quite raw. He came to he was on the 3rd Bs, which is like the 5th team in Blackrock College until this last year. He just kind of grown into himself, so it's all come very quickly for him. I think his ceiling is quite high. I suppose I like Chesham a lot, which obviously he was injured in November. I'd have no issue with Marrow and Chesham being the 2 locks, but I think that I think McCarthy has a little bit about him that we haven't seen yet, that hopefully will be shown in the Six Nations.
I've gone for McCarthy and Byrne. Now McCarthy, I saw him in Leinster play at Leicester last season and was blown away by his athleticism. Just obviously when the first time or the first few times you see players in the flesh, they can really wow you with athleticism, and he really did that. Byrne I've kept in at lock just because there is so much competition in that back row. How do we do it? I wouldn't mind. I'm happy.
I was happy with McCarthy as well.
McCarthy and Itoje.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, that's fair.
We'll have that then. Okay. 6. I'll go first because I can't see this guy on either of your lists.
Can we do it as like a back row, because I
Yeah.
think combinations do matter to me.
Okay.
I sorry to be a super nose on this, but it's about dovetailing.
No,
so I'd like to hear your fullback
I
row.
think my 7 is the one that I know you're absolutely chomping to shoot down. So Matt Fagerson, Jack Willis, and Caelan Doris for me. Fagerson, bit of a bopper, which my pack probably needs, and as Bernard mentioned, just was really impressed with him in Glasgow's run in the URC. He always, I've covered a lot of Calcutta Cup games, and he relishes those. He's always absolutely awesome, seemingly. Caelan Doris sort of speaks for himself at number 8, I think. Jack Willis, I've just seen him now in so many big games for Toulouse turn up and totally boss them, and he's been captaining them. He's clearly hit the ground running there, and I know he's outside of Test rugby, and I know he wasn't satisfied with how his World Cup went in 2023. He got injured, but I think even before that he was quite frustrated. But there's going to be some logistical problems. I think the top 14 final, which he'd have a pretty good chance of getting in, is on the day of the first match out in Australia against Western Force. So there's going to be a bit of crossing fingers to get him ready for the tests if he does get picked. But yeah, so I've got Matt Fagerson, Jack Willis, Caelan Doris. Someone else stop me talking.
Yeah, I'm not going to throw stones at this stage. I've gone a bit unorthodox, but I've gone for Van der Fleer at 7, Doris at 8, and Sam Underhill as my 6. I just feel that Sam Underhill, how good he was in the Premiership final, how good he is in big games for England. Seeing Australia with Valentini, Skelton potentially, Harry Wilson, even their centres, some big ball runners. I think his defensive ability with Van der Fleer would be just phenomenal. And yeah, for me, that was my makeup, and that's why I went a bit more line-out operators at second row.
Yeah, I went for Chandler Cunningham South at 6. I just think the ability to stop Australia dead in their tracks, you know, the likes of Taniela Tupu, Will Skelton, you know, Valentini, as you said. I just think we need a big physical hitter there, so I've gone for him at 6. Underhill at 7. I think he's class. I presume and hope he's going to play more for England. And Josh Van der Fleer has had a good November. Huge amount of work rate, but I just think Underhill has a little bit more football in him. And then I've gone for Doris at 8. So my back row would be Cunningham South, Underhill, and Doris.
What are we going to do at 6, gents?
I can see the value in playing 2 sevens essentially.
I think if you've got McCarthy there,
Yeah.
and to do some of that carrying,
Yeah.
and we've got some big lumps to help in the centres, some strong wingers potentially. I think you could go with that.
Have we got enough line out?
Doris is
Doris is good. Yeah.
able as a third option,
Yeah.
I would say.
Whoosh. Underhill 6, Van der Fleer 7.
I'm happy with that,
Goody,
yeah.
you stay
So
quiet.
I'm obviously happy with that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that.
Okay, I'm very happy with that. Okay, 9. I've gone Jamison Gibson-Park.
Yeah, same.
No, I've gone Mitchell. I've gone Alex Mitchell.
Nice. Back from injury today, off the bench for Saints
Yeah,
against Costa.
yeah. I think the game is heading towards more contestables, and it's an area that Jamison's not brilliant at. I know Mitchell brings tempo, but I think he's got a better kicking game, and I think England missed him this November. So I went for him with Gibson-Park coming on.
So I think Mitchell is a brilliant player. I don't know, it's something about Gibson-Park, his defensive work, he's so smart. The kicking will be interesting. It's obviously changing the game. I think that's another thing that Ireland are probably struggling with currently, because that possession game where teams can just put the ball up and win it back so quick. I don't think Gibson-Park's terrible.
No.
And I just think his overall game, his speed, and depending on who we have at 10, for me, I think he just gets the ball there, 19 times out of 20, just speed the ball, gets it. Mitchell's more of that running threat, and I definitely have him coming off the bench later on into the game for me.
One guy we didn't mention, and you're going to laugh, Goody, because he's another Scot, is Ben White. But just as far as combinations, if we're going to go the way of Russell at 10, and he's a very good kicker, very accurate, consistent there, and he just gets the ball in Finn Russell's hands, and he's got a lot of tenacity about him, which I like. But we've gone Gibson-Park, have we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Can you also stop this narrative that I don't like Scottish people, or I don't want to pick Scottish players, because I'm going to get hate mail here. They've had a great autumn. They're very good players. I don't have any issue with them. Stop trying to stir the fire.
Redeem yourself then. Who's your number 10?
Finn Russell for me. I think there's a lot of combinations with him in the back line. I think he's the one he's showing a maturity now. He's leading this Scottish team really well. I think he's just the form player, and I think he's someone that people look to in a team now, and he's a sort of talisman for Scotland, for Bath, but in a really positive way.
I've also gone with him.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty clear for me that he's the top 10 at the moment.
Right, let's go. Are we going? Let's go into the centres.
Let's go centres,
Yeah.
I think.
Stick with you, Goody.
No, I'd like to go last on this.
Okay, great.
I've gone all Scottish. I've gone Tupulatu
Okay.
and Hugh Jones.
Wow, okay.
I think that they would suit how Farrell will want to play. Everyone thinks that Farrell is defence coach, but he actually has been obsessed about attack for the last 4 or 5 years in Ireland. The Ireland attack is Andy Farrell's attack. He runs that. He lets Simon Easterby do the defence, and I think the way he wants Ireland to play and how he'd want the Lions to play, he'd probably go for a combination, and I think that combination would do him justice.
I've gone with Tupulatu and Jones, and I am, like you, Bernard, I think that's a fantastic point. So interested as to how Andy Farrell takes charge of this attack, and whether because he's got scope to lean on combinations that he is so familiar with, and just I'm really interested to see who he rates from different nations, and what that says about how they've gone against Ireland, and what that says about what he can implement for this Ireland team. So Alex, we're sticking with those centres, our centres, but please make a pitch.
I think really good points you made. I've gone slightly different. I've gone for Peluto at 12. I've gone for a combination. I've gone for Ollie Lawrence at 13. It's a bit out of the box, but I think to your point there, Bernard, I don't think he's been used as well as he could be for England. When he plays for Bath and he's using those wonderful flat balls from Finn Russell on the outlines, hitting sort of one channel further out, not just into the seam, into the back row, I think he's much more devastating. And his link with Finn Russell has started to really blossom. It's a bit like we saw in Paris with Finn and Vakatawa, where once they start working together, it's so devastating. And those little chip plays, those flat passes, I think it could be a bit outside the box. And I think in attack, I think he brings the most in that sense. But there are some worries about his defence.
Interesting, right. Wings, we can take them as a pair, can we?
Sorry, just on the back of this, though, it's really interesting for me how probably before the autumn, we would have been saying Henshaw, Ringrose, Ake. They would have been the three guys. Probably Sione would be in there as well. But it's amazing how much that's changed for me. It's quite interesting. Interesting your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, obviously, look, I've gone for them, but I also, at the back of my mind, I'm fearing that Scotland had a soft autumn. You know, like, let's be honest, against South Africa, okay, they played some good stuff, but they were pretty well beaten in the end. And maybe Australia, that third game sometimes is a difficult one for them, for teams. And then obviously they played Portugal and a very young Fijian side. But look, I think we definitely the centres, they can go toe to toe with anybody, and have done for Scotland, for Glasgow. But I'm comfortable enough about them. But the other positions, I think they probably need to have a big Six Nations. I think Farrell will take. He'll really see who's coaching well and who's playing well in the Six Nations before he makes any big judgments.
Big game, Ireland, Scotland then.
Yeah.
Scotland.
Wings, we can do them together as well then. I've gone James Lowe on the left. Darcy Graham, potentially a little bit of a wild card, but I feel like he's been pretty consistently effective for Scotland. There are so many options here. I'm gutted to leave behind someone like Mac Hansen, just a fantastic footballer, and he's got that, like Tuipulotu, who's got that fantastic storyline of going back to Oz. But yeah, Lowe and Graham for me.
I've gone for Lowe as well, and I'm going for Tommy Freeman. I think while you get with Lowe, and I think we saw it today in the game against Australia where they're 5 yards out and they do that play where Aki runs into the crease off 9, Lowe out the back, and it's a play we've seen with Charlie, you were seeing with Slightholme many times. And that is just like the big winger running across field into sort of 12, 13 channel, does well as he can. Lowe can smash into there and get quick ball, but then he delivers a pass to Henshaw, which then completely cuts their line up. And one pass later, they've just done a pop-off 9 and Doris scores under the post, barely touched. And it just showed his footballing ability. I think he's not a speedster, no, and he's not amazing in the air. He's good defensively in the air. And that's why I want Freeman there, because his aerial game is superb. And with Finn Russell kicking that way, I think it's a big part of the game now. And I want him to go and get that ball back. And he's a real athlete. He's a proper athlete. But Lowe brings that softer skills, the kicking with his left foot, his ability to pass. He can be a bit of not a playmaker, but another link man.
Yeah, I went for Duan van der Merwe as my starting left wing with James Lowe. The toss of a coin between both of those. I just think Van der Merwe's ability to finish is a step above James's. I think James brings a lot his left boot with his all round playmaking and his ability to offload. But I think Farrell would be envious of. I would love to have someone like Duan on finishing off some of the play that they'd like to play. And then on the right wing, I went for Faye Boso or Darcy Graham or Freeman. I went for Faye Boso. No, but in that order. So, but I'm way off. You two guys are. I'm outvoted.
No,
here.
but I could also see it going with Duran van der Merwe and Faye Boso as well. The options there, depending on how they want to go after it. It's huge, this Six Nations for that. I think that is as open as it can be anywhere.
To ask maybe an obvious question, is there a reason that none of us have considered Duan van der Merwe on the right and getting those two both in the same side? Would that unbalance things too much?
Lowe and
Van der Merwe?
Van der For me, I don't think you've got a great ability to go win the ball back in the air, and we're seeing with the new rules how important that is. It's just a really easy way into the game. If you're not quite getting a set piece perfect, the ruck's a bit of a mess. We talked about the ref maybe really brutal at the breakdown. Just ability, how often England would put the ball up and someone like Freeman would be winning the scraps. I just think is massive. And I think he's the best at that by probably quite a way. And I think he's a real athlete. And I think if you've got a Lowe who isn't like the best finisher but brings other skills to the party, having a real speedster, a good athlete on the other wing is pretty important. But you could also put Van der Merwe there, Farewell Rosso, Darcy Graham in that sense. But for me, the aerial game was the most important. And I think Finn Russell's pretty good at hitting those sort of crossfield bombs. And I think that will play into it. And he loves a crossfield kick, so that would play into picking him.
Given what you do for a living, I'm happy for you to pick the back three slot. So Freeman at right wing.
Well, no one else picked him in that.
No, he was on my list. He wasn't started, but I can see the logic in that completely. I do agree with you. The aerial game is going to be massive, and he's well able to finish and beat people as well. So no, I'd be happy with Freeman. You're right.
And I thought Lowe had a decent autumn again. Like he's a consistent performer for Ireland, and someone who does a big job for them.
Darcy Graham off the bench to cause havoc in the last 20 minutes or something like that.
I mean, Doohan, Darcy,
Feo Boso wouldn't calm it down.
Mac.
Yeah, Mac. It's a bit of a toss of a coin, I feel like, 15, unless a bolter comes along. We've got Blair Kinghorn or Hugo Keenan. I went with Keenan.
Did you?
I did.
I went with Kinghorn, and while I've loved Keenan for a long while, and he is so important to the Irish shape, and his fitness, his backfield coverage, his aerial game, reading of the game, and just how he's always in the play in attack has been excellent. I think Blair Kinghorn we're seeing an unbelievable version of him at the moment in the last 12 months. He's back to playing 15 for Scotland. The way he played in that European final for Toulouse was extraordinary. It was brilliant. The aerial work he did that day, which is so important. And I just think his link with Finn Russell and someone who's played 10 a bit more, played 10, there's another playmaker there. We've got a lot of athletes in this back line, and for me, his kicking ability, his playmaking, aerial game, and just his form at the moment is really, really strong. So I think he's playing brilliantly.
Yeah, I'd agree with Alex. I think Hugo has been amazing for the last couple of years. Went to play sevens in Paris and hadn't really found his form. Today was his best game, actually, of this season. But I went for Kinghorn as well, and I think that it's that second playmaker and just the confidence and he's bringing in attack. And I think Keenan may come under pressure from a young kid called Jamie Osborne, just in Leinster and Ireland as well. So I think Kinghorn has got some momentum behind him at the moment.
We have come to a 15 that is Pierre Schoeman, Dan Sheehan, Xander Fagerson, Maritoji, Joe McCarthy, Sam Underhill, Josh van der Fleer, Caelan Doris, Jamison Gibson-Park, Finn Russell, James Lowe, Sione Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones, Tommy Freeman, Blair Kinghorn. That is a share of 6 Scots, 6 Irish, 3 English. Let's talk about Wales, because there are candidates there. Dowie Lake, Jack Morgan. Rio Dyer is potentially a bit of an outside shot for the wing. I've liked watching him over the last couple of years. Works seriously hard, very pacey. But they're going to need a very impressive Six Nations, you feel, to get a few places on that plane, probably fair to say.
Yeah, I think Thomas Williams is probably good.
Yes.
They'll have tourists, but it's just getting. I looked at him today, obviously, to see who could nudge into the test team that we're picking, and I just didn't think any of them would. Now, Jack Morgan and Dewey Lake would do themselves and their country justice if they played, but just at the moment it's just so hard for them in a very poor team to really, I suppose, show how good they are. Bar obviously fighting till the end, which they're doing at the moment. Yeah,
pretty tough. I think even it would take a big turnaround for someone like Liam Williams, just for versatility, because he can play fullback and wing, having that third fullback option, because none of those wingers are really options there. But it's tough as well for a lot of those players, and they're playing in Welsh regions, and they're not competing in the top tier of Europe as much, or in those big games come the knockout stages. So it's going to be quite tough for them to put their best foot forward. But we'll see. We'll see how they turn out in the Six Nations. It's a lot to play for. Big question for me then, probably an obvious one, but who are you guys making captain?
Give me Tuipulotu. I'm so into the storyline of it all, and I think he'll play. I think he's going to be a pretty integral part of the tour, because he'll be able to play, shift across both centre positions. And as I say, I just like, maybe I'm just taken by that advert with his gran in it, but no, give me him. Doris Itoje. You've got.
I think Doris or Itoje for me, probably Doris, just because he's been doing it regularly for Ireland, and I think he is. I didn't say it, but I think Ferguson in the back row, he's been exceptional. But it's unfortunate Doris is an unbelievable player who doesn't make bad decisions and is a solid leader who they'll need out there more than anything. So for me, Doris would be captain. Lot of decisions. Don't want to be a selector, is what I've decided.
There'll be a bit of noise around selection. There'll be a bit of noise around this selection, and we'll be reminded of people we haven't mentioned, which we obviously rate. We just they've slipped our mind. But lads, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Bernard.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a million.
Nice one, Goody.
Cheers, guys. You can't please everyone, Charlie. That's the way the world living.
That's a wrap for today's episode and our final episode of the autumn series. Thanks for watching and listening to the Quick Tap in partnership with Continental Tires, our go-to for premium tyres. Whether on the rugby field or the road, safety always comes first. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us on social media for the latest rugby updates.